Thank you for being with us as we listen to God. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so money is no object. There is no fear of conflict. What are our biggest barriers?
So we're talking about just the building itself?
Anything.
Anything. Can we give me abstract?
Yeah, I think a barrier would be, I think if you take us as a whole, I think we're generally welcoming and friendly, but I think there are limits there and where those limits are. And that's as a whole,
As a whole? Okay.
I think.
So as a whole, there's maybe a big moat. With alligators in here.
Well, on the positive side, I think there are a significant number of people who would graciously welcome anyone.
Uh-huh.
But
So
I think
there are some-
it could reach a point where we would have conflict depending on who those people are.
So there's some strong bridges
Okay,
across the moat.
I think at least half, I'm not sure that I can say the majority of the people, but I think at least half would be welcoming to a diverser group of people coming in, but we either don't know how or we're not willing to go out and figure out how to get them here.
Okay.
To me, when I drive down Drake, like if I'm coming from the natatorium or the scout shop, that side, Drake on that side of Whitesburg, all the way up, is a totally different group of people, housing, income, than what is once we cross Whitesburg and come up to here. And I look at the people thinking, oh my gosh, how could we get these people involved in our church and stuff? But I don't,
So the parkway is really
well,
So maybe we got, Whitesburg has some
I
spikes on
think
it.
Whitesburg, yeah.
And they, whatever it is.
Like when we had Della.
because Drake.
Yeah, when we had Della, you know, and it's like
Talking
everybody
about
knows
Cat
Della's
and
the
Bird.
flower lady, but nobody knew until
Right.
Kay and I talked about the flowers, and then Kay Easton drove up and introduced herself, and
Uh-huh.
you know that it's
Yeah.
how
Well, it was put to me over the weekend that our church is extremely friendly, but it's very difficult to make friends.
Okay, so we have
yeah maybe
a friendly church, some friendly people here, but people who visit, maybe it's still hard to get across the moat.
So I didn't know if that meant we're too clique oriented, or we're just too busy to take the time.
So maybe we're kind of in a bubble a little bit.
Well, on that line, I mean, this is what came to mind, like, this is like my only thing on here is that, and because I, having been here since I was a teenager, off and on, I think that part of it's my family, but these conversational groups,
Right.
it clogs up the narthex. And okay,
Okay.
so conversational groups is awesome. It's wonderful. But if you come in as an outsider, you can't even get through the hall. Then up here in the Sunday school area, it's my family, they're clogging the hall. And I always feel really
traffic jam in the
uncomfortable.
narthex.
I'm like, okay, I'm moving on. Y'all scoot over.
Yeah.
Hey.
I just barrel through.
But it's not just the traffic jam, it's the inward looking. It's not
Yeah.
the outward, you know, it's
Are
a
you
more
noticing anyone
inward.
else? Yeah.
And the same is going on in the narthex.
So narthex
So-
has a kind of interior
It,
focus.
yeah.
And like I feel guilty when I just scoot through there and don't say hi to anybody. But
I know,
I
but-
I gotta go. Sorry.
Well, or you feel like you're interrupting.
Yeah.
I just feel like you're interrupting their
Uh-huh.
conversation, so I just scoot on by and.
So there's some good relational energy happening here.
Yeah.
Some good happy faces, but it's not necessarily being harnessed all the time
Well, it's not outward. It's
to be open and welcoming
right.
for others.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Just
It's a
that.
very common problem. very common. Part of the barrier here on Whitesburg,
Yeah.
westbound, is dollar signs.
Yes, exactly.
dollars.
So that's
And
certainly
that-
something.
And that might be reflected in our, because we haven't viewed evangelism in this way before, it might be
Right.
reflected in our budget, in our
Mhm.
spending.
Right.
And you know, I would put some of those dollar signs on the other side of the board too. I think one of my challenges with evangelism is I always feel like it is a socioeconomic downhill project. Like, we've got all this stuff, we're gonna invite you, because
Right.
you don't, and come enjoy it. And that's great, don't get me wrong, that's fine. But those people that live up on the hill
Yes.
in those
Yeah.
million-dollar mansions, like, I don't have the foggiest idea how to go help them. Like,
So we've
I
got these
just
hills up here.
Don't have any idea.
Who are
how
these
to start.
people?
Yeah,
We have maybe, that I'm aware of, a few people that live in our immediate neighborhood, but this is not the neighborhood church that everybody up
right.
Downing Street and in Cedarhurst and are just saying,
Yeah.
oh, just go next door to Covenant. That's not our relationship with our neighborhood.
Well, and people seem to falsely think those people have it all together. They have no problems
Mhm.
either.
So we have a
They have some
barrier.
There is
bigger
a-
problems.
Yeah.
We
than
have barriers
you have.
coming down
Big time.
that we're kind of a middle class suburban church.
Mhm.
Not necessarily gonna, maybe you will, but you might not make all the business connections you would
Yeah.
at a different
Sure.
church.
Right. Your kids aren't gonna be in
Yeah,
the
you-
cool kid crowd.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe. And we have an uphill battle here. We're the right fit for somebody, for a good number of people, and we have a lot of those people here. So
So are we advertising to those people up there, like Wednesday night, all around here? We advertise to our neighbors?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think we have any. So let's think about bridges. So now we're kind of thinking, okay, here are some of the barriers. What would we want to tear down? What bridges would we want to build in their place? We think
One
about,
bridge is our location. You know,
oh,
we're talking
yeah,
about people on
Yeah.
both sides, but
Well,
we're in a
Yeah.
fantastic
right.
location.
So a
We're
negative is
close to both
actually,
sides. and-
Exactly.
it could be a positive.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's
So this
a,
is actually kind of cool
That's a
that we
bridge.
have this kind of confluence on both sides. So we have the opportunity to be kind of, what would it be? Crossroads almost.
It's like the
I'll put a,
marketplace
sign.
in the middle. It's like Sam and I both love stories with kingdoms and things like this, and I think of it now that you've said it that way. It's like there's the big castles up there, and then down over on this side are the folks who are struggling, but kind of, you know, how can we be the marketplace in the middle where everybody kind of comes together?
yeah.
And,
So there is an opportunity here for socioeconomic diversity.
I was thinking of
Yeah.
when I met Abby Sunday. She's right there at the art things, and I just thought, isn't this wonderful? And I just thought, wow, she could, and I'm sure she is, just empowering and encouraging maybe her own friends to, you know, who are artistic or something like that, any kind of talent. And we could really expand that within the church.
Uh-huh. I
And
like that.
the kids.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this church has one of the most remarkably talented group of people I've ever seen. I think in terms of, I don't know what you say, how we would write that, but
But they have that potential to reach
Talent.
out to others through
Yeah.
those talents. and
not just
gifts.
art. I haven't met a lot of artists here. I've met a lot of incredible engineers, medical professionals, lots of interesting people. So yeah, finding a way to,
Talent.
you know, get that light out from under a bushel.
I think that Advent program.
well, I think a bridge along that line is, to me, has been how,
I agree.
because if I say, Hal, I got this idea to get some of the rescue mission people in here, or I say, Hal, I got this idea, I'm gonna go up here, walk up here every day on Downing Street and knock on doors. Hal's always been the type to say, go for it.
Yeah, yes.
He has. Every idea I've ever come up with, he's always said, go for it. Now, I didn't always go for it, but it wasn't because there were barriers in my way. It was my
Yeah.
own barriers. So I think that's a good thing for all this talent we're talking
Yeah.
about, that we have the freedom in this church to use our talents.
Yeah.
You know, and not meaning there's no supervision or anything like that, but we do have, and we are encouraged, I think, maybe we're not doing it, but I really believe that we are encouraged in that.
And then how do we
sense.
also take that talent away from this building to somewhere else that's
Yeah.
still, even if it's not bringing somebody to our church, introducing them to God and to Jesus, and maybe they're more comfortable in a church in their area, or like one of the things I thought about as I was reading this, I have a lot of people who just seem amazed when I say that I'm running or this and that. I wish I could run. I wish I could do that. I'm like, well, I couldn't run 3 years ago, and I do. And I have thought about maybe starting a little run, walk, run training group, and maybe getting a group together and training them to do a 5K or something. But then I thought, I don't want to do it here. Let's meet at let's meet at Jones Farm. And run there, and we could have our little group under the pavilion and then run stuff, and then that gives you the opportunity for someone else to see you doing that. Hey, what are you doing? And then you can talk to them, how do we get out into that community? So we're something that
So that's a great example
we're braver together.
Yeah,
of a bridge. So Cindy has a talent for running, and people have a need to run. And a bridge would be, let's meet at Covenant and run together. So that's a bridge over this moat to these people that don't have a connection. That's one of the ways she describes, good ways to think about bridges. What are you good at? What are you talented at? Not some other church, but us, Covenant. And what are the needs across the moat? How do we connect those two dots? And those are the very specific, concrete prayers that we need to really get into the DNA. Get lots of people thinking about, what are my talents specifically? What are the needs concretely? How do we connect these together? What are the teams to get that to happen? And I would just concur about Hal, super well respected in the community, himself an amazing evangelist, and he is actually sending people out. 30 years, it's like remarkable resource.
You've made a light.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate your encouragement.
Are you embarrassed?
Let me tell you a downside to that, and that is that sometimes I'm so focused on, whatever the Spirit moves you to do something, do it. The downside to that is that I think sometimes we're so going so many different directions rather than focusing, and that's probably been the downside for me. Is my focus is so much on, if the Spirit of God is calling you, if it builds up the body and glorifies God, go for it. But the idea of how do
So
we
what if-
narrow that down?
What if we had a couple of really focused big arrows going out on making our crossroads? So it wasn't just a million things, but that would be interesting. If we were known for a couple things.
Well, they talk about here that a leader has a laser-like focus on evangelism.
Yep.
I think we've had a focus on evangelism, but it's not laser-like.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of a whole host of things.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you have that laser-like focus? And that's something that I have not done well, and I'm not sure how to do that.
So these are actually laser beams coming out of our talent.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing about maybe downsizing your efforts so that you have more people heading in this one direction. Because that's something else I've heard from people from time to time is, if you start leading here, well then you're supposed to lead here and here and here and here and here and here and here, and then you're so stretched that you become less effective.
So what if there was a little oasis at Covenant? Where people could be refreshed who were working really hard. We weren't burning people out.
Like Crucio or the Women's Retreat.
Yeah, I mean, the women's retreat.
Not having to be the leader at women's retreat every year.
It's really fun.
Pretty nice.
Sorry to admit it.
Yeah.
So there's a downside,
Yeah.
and there's an upside to all of that.
And if we aren't doing this, how do we look when we go out into the community? Do we have time for these people?
Yeah.
Are we giving them our best? That's something I'm convicted about, is if I spread myself too thin, what am I giving to people? Is it a happy, joyful pastor, or is it a tired, bedraggled pastor? And
Like the saturation.
saturation, yeah. So I think that's a great, I never saw that in this one of this extra.